5 of the most overrated. Just a list of albums I wasn't that into, really. I'll be honest, the word overrated is kind of flawed in many ways. I mean, just because something is overhyped doesn't really mean it can't be good. If a lot of people like something, that's totally fine. There's no real weight behind the word overrated. You can get away with underrated because you're just highlighting albums that people may not have heard. So you're giving people recommendations, but with overrated, you're essentially just moaning, and that's kind of pointless. But hey, they're fun to make, they're fun to talk about. So this is just a list really of me talking about albums that got a lot of praise, and I'm just here to say, I'm not sure why. I'm gonna start off with Mitski's Be the Cowboy. Now, it's kind of weird putting this on the list because back when I heard Puberty 2, I was kind of rooting for Mitski, honestly. I was like, you know what, she deserves a bigger audience. She deserves to be at the spotlight of the, you know, indie stardom, if you will. But she wasn't quite there. She had a few, you know, publications rooting for her, a few critics out there that praised her. But I thought, you know, she deserves a little bit more. Didn't love the album. Puberty 2 was just okay to me. Probably about on the same level-ish as Be the Cowboy. Maybe I would say Puberty 2 is just a little bit better in my books. Still, I was like, hey, she deserves more attention. And lo and behold, she gets more attention, and here I am throwing her on an overrated list. This is hypocritical if I've ever heard hypocrisy in my life. Yeah, Be the Cowboy just didn't hit, man, for me. It was nice on the ears at times. I like the first track. I think the first track's great. Geyser, I think it is. Two Slow Dances is alright too. Like, there's some really good tracks on the album, but I don't know, man. There was just something about the sound that kind of got played out by the end. Lyrically, I found this album to be pretty basic, honestly. Like, the lyrical themes on here were pretty relatable. I could see a lot of people gravitating towards her lyricism because I feel as though it is very relatable. But for me, I mean, that kind of thing doesn't impact me with music. So, you know, I'm not seeking out for relatability. And if there's nothing else really to grab onto, then I'm just kind of left wondering, you know, what is it that I'm supposed to be feeling here? Like, what am I needing from this album? I'm just not getting it. So what should it be? Tracks like Nobody were great tunes, but again, lyrically, it sounded like, to me, a teenager was writing the lyrics. Like, they were so basic. Here's the thing, I'm not trying to be superior above this album and say, you know, the lyrics were too basic for me. I need layers upon layers of metaphors and that's not what I'm trying to say, because, you know, I love a lot of albums that aren't particularly that well written from, you know, I guess from a standpoint of, well, these are amazing lyrics that you would absolutely never hear anywhere else. You know, I love the Best album, I love the Surface Set Missive album. These are fun, energetic albums, but when you read into the lyrics, they're not particularly all that amazing or special. But the difference is with those, is that I can recognize that they're not album of the year. They're albums that are going to be like, you know, in the 30s, 40s or something like that on my year-end list. Whereas with Mitski, she's topping every album of the year list. Like, every publication is calling this a top 5 album of the year. And I'm just like, where and how? Like, what are you hearing? What am I hearing? What am I missing? I just can't get a hold of what's so great about this album. Like, it's fine at best. It's probably one of the most 6 out of 10 albums I've heard all year. And it just doesn't scream out to me as great music. So yeah, this has made it onto the list because I'm just kind of confused, really. I don't see what's so good about this. But if someone wants to explain, then please do, because I'm all ears. You know, I'm all for hearing out why people love this and why I don't. Next on the list is MGMT's Little Dark Age. Now with this album, it's very different because you're not going to see this on all the publications lists. I mean, it might make it on a few, but I've not really seen this getting that rave reception in the same way like a Mitski has been getting. But there was a lot of praise thrown on this album from, you know, YouTube critics, and this album is like top 15, I believe, on Rate Your Music for 2018, which is absolutely fine. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a step up from their last album, and honestly, probably a little bit of a step up from Congratulations too, which I know is an unpopular opinion because I know MGMT fans adore that album, but I didn't really ever get that much from it. Which makes me think, am I just not the person for this band? Because A Little Dark Age, again, was just okay to me. There is one amazing track on here, which is the title track, Little Dark Age. This track has such a great way of building this atmosphere, this really moody vibe that had such an interesting and unique sound to what you would hear in most modern music, I think. And then from that moment on, they pretty much ditched that sound and went for your standard synth pop type stuff, which was catchy. You know, there's some catchy tracks. One Thing Left to Try is a great track. I like that one a lot. For a while I thought it would make my year-end list in the songs, but you know, just as the year's gone on, better songs have come out, really. Other than that, I mean, it was kind of just fine, you know. Tracks like James just kind of moved along at a pretty sluggish pace, I guess. Me and Michael felt like the ultimate cheesiest song I think I've heard. I don't use that word that much, to be honest. I try and keep away from saying cheese in regards to music. But that song really was quite cheesy. As well as She Works Out Too Much, I just found it really like 80s nostalgic in a way that got on my nerves quite a bit. To be honest, I think based on their last album, the expectations bar kind of dropped so low that because MGMT ended up putting out something pretty solid and decent, that the response jumped up here, because it's like, oh shit, we weren't expecting this, so this is actually really good, when in reality it's just fine. Some catchy tunes here and there, but vocally I don't really find all that much gripping from this guy, to be honest. He kind of isn't all that exciting and engaging as a vocalist for my ears, so yeah, I'm just not really feeling this one, I suppose. Next on my list, the unordered list, by the way. There isn't an order to this, I'm just essentially running through albums that I particularly didn't find all that great. Cardi B's Invasion of Privacy. Get the money moves. Cardi B is a rapper who has grabbed a lot of people's attention based off of her personality in interviews. She has such a such a way of words. I've seen some interviews where I'm genuinely laughing out loud at the things she says, because she is genuinely really funny, really bubbly, really quirky. Like in a lot of ways, she's like Vince Staples to me, where I can watch them in an interview for so long because I just find them to be hilarious personalities. Not to say that their music's anything alike, by the way, that's not what I mean. I'm just saying in the sense that they are two artists in music that just so happen to be really funny personalities as well as being artists. So in regards to Cardi B, she broke out big in 2017 with the track Bodak Yellow, which from the get-go I was like, okay, this is one of the most generic trap songs I think I've heard in quite some time, and somehow this has made it to #1 in the charts. Of course it has. That seems to be the way of the world with the charts. You can find the most blandest frigging piece of music make its way to the top, and that's not to say that, you know, I hate all popular things, because not every chart song is bad, but this was one that really struck me as like, huh? Since then, she released subsequent singles, and of course, finally we got to the Invasion of Privacy album, which upon release received rave reviews, and I just don't get it. I mean, look, this album is topping the year-end list just the same way Mitski is too. I've seen this in top 5, top 10s, you know, above albums that honestly were kind of much better than this. This isn't a bad album by any means. I mean, I'll be honest, some tracks did grow on me since my initial review, so you probably shouldn't go back and watch that, because it's not as accurate to how I really feel about the album. But it really isn't that special in terms of hip-hop in 2018. The fact that I keep seeing publications reference her personality in regards to the actual music, it's just kind of bizarre to me. Yeah, I know I've also just been talking about her personality, but they're two separate entities, because on this album we get pretty stale, ordinary sounding trap bangers that don't really add that much to the hip-hop genre as a whole. The only track to me that I thought felt genuinely fresh and unique was the track I Like It, which also was a #1 smash hit, which is interesting because this is a very different sounding song to a lot of hip-hop songs in today's modern climate, which I appreciate, and that's why I found it such an ear-grabbing track, because it's just so left field. You know, it uses a sample from Peter Rodriguez from like the 60s, I think it is, I think that song's from, and it's instantaneously hooky and earwormy. Much of this album was the same shit, different day, essentially. You know, we get She Bad with YG, which is atrocious, to me anyway, and everything else was kind of just passable. Like, there were some bad moments, some bad features, but at the end of the day, Cardi B didn't really offer anything different in the game that made this stand out as a highlight for the music in 2018. It was a passable, fine, I suppose, album that just, I don't think warrants the amount of praise it's got. I think it's essential that her personality starts showing up in the music, that sense of humor, that wild attitude. I feel as though it's lost when it's in her music. She kind of just sounds like a pretty ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill rapper to me when she's rapping on a track. But when she's out there in interviews, she's fun, she's over the top, and I just don't think those two things match up. So it's a shame, really, because I think there is something there, but this album wasn't it. Next on the list, Veteran by JPEGMAFIA. Yeah, you can just go back to my review and see how much my opinion did not resonate with anyone just by looking at the like to dislike ratio. Kind of thing doesn't really bother me, to be honest. It's funny to see that kind of thing happen. It's okay. I'm totally fine with people completely disagreeing with me. I have no issues with that. But this album, I have to express that I struggle to see what was so great about it. JPEGMAFIA has a lot of talent, and he's proven that he has a great rapping ability with subsequent features and releases since this album came out. The feature that he did on Denzel Curry's album was one of my favourite moments on the album, and then the single he released with Kenny Beats, Puff Daddy, was a fucking great song. So I can admit that, yeah, sure, I don't particularly think Veteran was good, but at least he's proven himself, to me anyway, with great tracks since this album. Even on the album too, there were some great moments, like the second and first track that I liked a lot. But most of the production on this thing, yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. The way each track flowed to another, I just found it to be kind of bland. I've heard a lot of people call his beats bangers and stuff, and like hard hitting, ooh, but I just hear really cheap, amateur sounding beats, to be honest. Like, it kind of sounds even more cheap now when you hear that he made the track with Kenny Beats, and Kenny Beats is such a good producer that it highlighted how good JPEGMAFIA can sound on great beats. I don't know, there was just this kind of hollow feel to many of the tracks. JPEGMAFIA a lot of the time raps in a way that's pretty humorous, but most of the time it feels to me like he's just saying shit for the sake of saying shit. I mean, there is literally a song on the album called I Can't Wait Till Morrissey Fucking Dies. So you can't really argue that this man attempts to be the edgiest guy he possibly can. Not to say that I love Morrissey or anything, or I want to defend Morrissey for the things he says, but it's just like, come on, dude. So many of these lyrics, like, I don't know, I just found from track to track he was just saying so much shit that didn't amount to anything other than like a teenager online trying to be the most offensive he possibly can. I watched this interview with him as well, where he was talking to the interviewer and saying how, like, as an artist, he feels obligated to speak truth to power, to say things that are necessary, to say things that need to be said in his music, which I am absolutely all for. Idols and Parquet Courts have been some of the most impactful albums, I think, this year, that have said a lot of things that perhaps need to be said, or, you know, have a political angle to them. But on the Veteran album, like, there was nothing thought-provoking on there. Like, I don't really see what he was saying that was needed to be said. He was really just throwing out lines here and there that had a bit of, you know, anger and a bit of oomph to them, but there wasn't really that much weight behind the words that he was actually saying. I mean, to me anyway. So for me, I think there's just some kind of disconnect between what he believes and what he's actually saying in his music. And it needs a little bit of tidying up before I can really call anything he puts out genuinely good or great. Finally, I have to apologise to Josh for this one, because I know he loves this album, and there are plenty of people out there that do too. But Double Negative by Low. Double Negative by Low. I appreciate that years upon years after their debut album, they have really gone in a completely different direction. I mean, a lot of bands love to, you know, change up their sound, change up their aesthetic years into their career, and it works incredibly well for them. And I always appreciate that bands are willing to change even so many years into their career. I can't really say that this album isn't unique or ambitious, because it absolutely is. I would say the comparisons to 22 A Million are pretty apt. The fractured vocals and the segmented synthesizers just really reminds me of the sound Bon Iver was already going for with that album. But I didn't like that album either, and I certainly don't like it when Low are trying it too. I just feel as though, apart from the track Quorum, everything else just doesn't fit right. Everything just feels like nothing is sitting properly at all. The vocals are completely emotionless. Like, I just can't get a handle of these two vocalists on this album. Like, they are just robots for me. Like, they're just singing in the same tone most of the time. The synthesizers that come together honestly sound kind of dated. Everything about Tempest just sounds ugly as fuck to me. The last track with that awful, like, addition of this weird fucking sound in the background, I just cannot get a hold of. Just sounds like this album was churned out by a machine. Like, I just don't feel a human touch to anything on this album. But yeah, outside of the experimentation, I can't help but feel like critics that are praising this album are just praising it for that it's just experimental and unique, and that's kind of all it has to offer. And that's essentially all I've got to say about this album. And that's the list. These are the albums that I feel as though don't really impact me the same way they've impacted other people. I'm not bashing people's tastes, you know, it's just a fun list to do. I'm just talking about albums that I personally don't feel as though are quite as good as what they've been made out to be. And that's okay. They might just not be for me. They are for other people. That's totally fine. Do let me know your thoughts on these albums if you feel as though they are much better than I've given them credit for. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Comment your overrated albums of the year if you feel as though there have been any. And that's it. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.